I didn't expect my CEO to fire me over Zoom, but I'm sure he didn't expect me to hit share screen and take his $7 million deal down with me. The call lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, long enough for him to destroy my career with corporate buzzwords and fake sympathy. Just long enough for me to realize he'd been planning this betrayal for months, waiting until I'd finished negotiating the biggest contract of his miserable tenure. But not long enough for him to understand what he'd just unleashed. My name is Isla McKenna, and for 10 years, I've been the person who makes impossible deals possible at Virion Technologies. Senior Project Director. That's what my business card says. But what I really do is clean up messes. When executives promise clients the moon and forget to mention we don't have rockets, I'm the one who builds the damn spacecraft. Virion is a financial data solutions startup that somehow convinced Fortune 500 companies we're worth their time. We analyze market trends, predict investment patterns, and package it all into pretty dashboards that make CFOs feel smart. The work isn't glamorous, but it pays well. And I'm good at it. Better than good, I'm the best negotiator they've ever had. I've saved this company more times than I care to count. Remember the Peterson Industries fiasco when our software crashed during their quarterly review? I spent 72 hours straight rebuilding their entire data model from scratch. The Hartwell Group contract that was falling apart over licensing disputes? I rewrote the terms so elegantly that both sides thought they'd won. That's what I do. I fix things. I make people happy. I deliver results. Then Bradley Stone walked through our doors 6 months ago. Brad's 41, grew up in Connecticut money, and has the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about rent. When our previous CEO stepped down, the board handed the company to Brad like it was his birthright. His first week, he called me into his office, all glass and steel, naturally, and told me how excited he was to work with someone of my caliber. I should have seen it coming. Brad asked questions, lots of them. How did I structure the Morrison deal? What was my strategy with the Singapore clients? Could I walk him through the risk assessment protocols? I thought he was being thorough, getting up to speed. I was actually impressed by his attention to detail. Stupid me. What Brad was really doing was downloading my brain. Every negotiation tactic, every relationship I'd built, every shortcut I'd discovered in 10 years of making miracles happen. He absorbed it all like a sponge. And once he'd learned everything he needed to know, he started cutting me out of meetings. Important emails stopped including me. My access to certain files mysteriously disappeared. The Valcrest Capital deal should have been my crowning achievement. $7 million for our newest predictive analytics platform. I'd spent 4 months building the relationship, understanding their needs, crafting a proposal that would revolutionize how they handled risk assessment. The contract was elegant, profitable, and solid. But Brad had other plans. The meeting request appeared in my calendar on a Tuesday morning. Strategic discussion, confidential, with just Brad and me. No agenda, no context. After months of being frozen out, I thought maybe he was finally ready to acknowledge what I'd built with Valcrest. I was so naive. Brad didn't waste time with pleasantries. The moment I joined the Zoom call, his face filled my screen, cold, calculating, already delivering a verdict I hadn't known was coming. Isla, I'm restructuring the senior management team, he said, his tone as flat as a corporate press release. Your position is being eliminated as part of our strategic realignment. This is effective immediately. The words hit me like ice water. I stared at his pixelated face, trying to process what I was hearing. I'm sorry. What? The company is moving in a new direction. Your skill set, while valuable, doesn't align with our future vision. He was reading from notes. Actually reading from notes while destroying my career. HR will send you the separation package details. You'll need to return all company property by end of day. 10 years. 10 years of 60-hour weeks, of saving deals that should have died, of building this company's reputation one impossible negotiation at a time. And he was firing me over Zoom like I was some junior analyst who'd missed a deadline. Brad, the Valcrest deal closes next week. I've been working on this for The deal will proceed as planned. We appreciate your foundational work. The way he said foundational made it sound like I'd been digging ditches. But moving forward, I'll be handling the client relationship personally. That's when I understood. This wasn't about restructuring or strategic vision, this was about theft. Brad had learned everything he needed from me, and now he was going to take credit for the biggest deal in company history. My deal. My 4 months of relationship building, my carefully crafted terms, my strategy. All of it about to become his victory. You signed a comprehensive NDA when you joined Virion, he continued. And there was something different in his voice now. Something that sounded almost like a threat. I trust you'll honor those obligations as you transition to whatever comes next. The silence stretched between us. He was waiting for me to break down, to beg, to promise I'd be good and disappear quietly. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. We both know you'll just disappear quietly, Isla. His smile was razor thin. That's what smart women do. That's what smart women do. I stared at his face on my screen, memorizing every detail of his arrogant expression. The way he leaned back in his chair like he owned the world. The satisfied smirk that said he'd planned this perfectly. I understand, I said quietly. Good. HR will be in touch. The call ended. My screen went black. And for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't thinking about how to fix something. I was thinking about how to break it. I sat in my car in the Virion parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at my phone. The rational part of my brain kept telling me to call a lawyer, to file a complaint, to take the high road. But the rational part was being drowned out by something much darker. Brad thought he was so clever. He'd waited until I'd done all the heavy lifting on Valcrest, then swooped in for the glory. But here's what happens when you spend 10 years as the person who fixes everything. You know where all the bodies are buried. I drove home and opened my laptop. My company access was still active. HR probably wouldn't get around to shutting it down until tomorrow. Corporate efficiency at its finest. I pulled up the Valcrest contract files, the ones I'd been building for months. That's when I saw it. Brad had been busy. The contract I'd carefully crafted had been modified. Clause 7.3, subsection B, the regulatory compliance section I'd spent weeks perfecting, had been changed, not improved. Changed. He'd simplified the language, removed what he probably thought was unnecessary legal jargon. The idiot had no idea what he'd just done. That unnecessary jargon was there for a reason. Valcrest Capital operates in 17 states, each with different financial data privacy laws. The original language I'd written created a framework that satisfied every single regulatory requirement. Brad's version, it violated California's stringent data protection statutes and potentially put Valcrest at risk for federal compliance issues. If this ever came to light during due diligence, Valcrest would run screaming, not just from the deal, but from any future business with Virion. The legal exposure alone would be enough to tank the contract. But Brad didn't know that. He thought he was streamlining, making the deal cleaner, more appealing. What he'd actually done was plant a landmine in the middle of his $7 million victory parade. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time in hours. Brad had made one crucial miscalculation. He'd assumed that firing me would make me disappear, that I'd slink away quietly, maybe badmouth him to a few industry contacts, but ultimately fade into irrelevance. He'd counted on my professionalism, my reputation, my desire to maintain relationships. What he hadn't counted on was that I'd spent 10 years learning exactly how this company worked. I knew every system, every protocol, every vulnerability. I knew which doors were locked and which ones just looked locked. More importantly, I knew the Valcrest deal better than anyone. I'd built every relationship, negotiated every term, identified every risk. I was the only person who understood the full scope of what Brad had just broken. The signing ceremony was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. Brad would present the contract to Valcrest's executive team, their legal department, and their compliance officers. He'd bask in the glory of closing the biggest deal in company history. unless someone happened to point out the glaring legal issues he'd just introduced. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a resignation letter or a complaint, something else entirely. I was going to give Brad exactly what he'd asked for. I was going to disappear quietly. But first, I was going to make sure he understood the difference between smart and clever. I had 3 days to build the perfect trap. Wednesday morning, I drove to Virion like nothing had happened. My badge still worked, another oversight in Brad's master plan. I nodded to security, grabbed coffee from the kitchen, and settled into my office like I'd been doing for 10 years. The difference was, today I wasn't fixing problems. I was creating one. My first stop was the shared drive where all the Valcrest presentation materials lived. Brad had already uploaded his version of the contract, complete with his dangerous modifications. I downloaded everything, then began building my own presentation. Valcrest Capital Deal, Regulatory Compliance Analysis. That's what I called it. 23 slides of pure, professional destruction. I documented every legal risk Brad had introduced, cited specific statutes, included penalty ranges that would make any CFO break into a cold sweat. I even added helpful graphics showing potential fine structures across different states. The beautiful part? Every word was true. Every citation was accurate. Every risk was real. I wasn't manufacturing problems. I was simply highlighting the ones Brad had created. By Thursday morning, I'd refined my presentation into something that would make compliance officers weep, but having the ammunition wasn't enough. I needed to be in the room when it went off. The final signing ceremony was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. A big Zoom call with all the key players, Brad leading from Virion's side, Valcrest's CEO Marcus Webb, their legal team, their compliance officers, and their board representatives. The kind of high-stakes meeting where everyone's camera would be on and every word would matter. I spent Thursday afternoon solving the access problem. Virion's meeting protocols were something I'd helped design years ago. For large client presentations, we always created a guest analyst login, a generic account that allowed junior team members or external consultants to join without cluttering the main participant list. The account was still active, still had presentation privileges, still trusted. I tested it Thursday evening, joining a test meeting from my home laptop. Everything worked perfectly. The account showed up as Guest Analyst Virion Technologies with full screen sharing capabilities. Anonymous enough to avoid immediate attention, official enough to not trigger security alerts. Friday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. and ran through my plan one more time. I'd embedded my slides into the main presentation deck, hidden them in the appendix section where they wouldn't be noticed during Brad's prep. When he opened the file for the meeting, he'd see his polished pitch deck. He'd have no idea what was lurking in the background. The meeting was scheduled to start with Brad's overview, then move through the technical specifications, pricing structure, and finally the contract terms. I'd let him get comfortable, let him build momentum with the Valcrest team. Let him think he was about to close the deal of his career. Then, just as he reached the contract section, I'd request control of the screen. Not unusual. Analysts often jumped in to clarify technical details, but instead of supporting his presentation, I'd launch my own. 23 slides of legal nightmare. Every regulation he'd violated, every risk he'd created, every reason why Valcrest should run as far away from this deal as possible. I'd present it professionally. Clinically. Like the compliance expert I'd become over 10 years of making sure deals didn't explode. By 1:30 p.m., I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop 6 blocks from Virion. Laptop open, presentation loaded. The guest analyst account was logged in and ready. I'd disabled my camera but kept my microphone active. I could hear everything, contribute when needed, but remain invisible until the moment was right. At 1:55 p.m., I joined the meeting. Brad was already there, looking confident and polished. The Valcrest team was filtering in. Serious faces, expensive suits, the kind of people who didn't appreciate surprises. "Welcome, everyone," Brad began. "I'm excited to present what I believe will be a transformative partnership." I muted my microphone and smiled. Showtime. Brad was in his element. For the first 20 minutes, He commanded the room with the kind of confidence that comes from stealing someone else's work. He walked through the technical specifications I'd developed, explained the market analysis I'd conducted, and presented the ROI projections I'd calculated. The Valcrest team was engaged. Marcus Webb, their CEO, nodded approvingly. Their legal team took notes. Their compliance officers looked satisfied. Everything was going exactly according to Brad's plan. "Now," Brad said, his voice carrying that victorious tone I'd heard in countless successful negotiations. "Let's review the contract terms that will make this partnership official." He clicked to the next slide. Contract overview. Clean. Simple. Exactly what he'd modified without understanding the implications. As you can see, we've streamlined the regulatory compliance section to ensure maximum operational efficiency. That was my cue. I clicked Request Screen Share and waited. Brad paused, probably seeing the notification pop up on his screen. In large meetings like this, analysts often jumped in to provide supporting details. Nothing unusual. "Excuse me," I said, unmuting my microphone. "I have some additional compliance information that might be relevant to the discussion." "Of course," Brad replied, though I could hear the slight confusion in his voice. He probably didn't recognize my voice through the computer speakers. "Go ahead." I took control of the screen. The first slide that appeared was blood red with white text. Regulatory compliance analysis. Critical legal risks identified. The silence was immediate and absolute. Brad's face went white. I could see him in his little Zoom window, frozen in horror as he realized what was happening. The Valcrest team leaned forward, suddenly very interested. "Based on recent contract modifications," I continued, my voice steady and professional, "I've identified several significant regulatory violations that could expose Valcrest Capital to substantial legal and financial risk." I clicked to the next slide. A breakdown of California's data privacy statutes, with specific citations highlighted in red. The current contract language violates California Civil Code Section 1798.E82, which could result in fines ranging from $100,000 to $750,000 per violation. Marcus Webb's expression changed instantly. His compliance officers started typing furiously. "Wait," Brad stammered. "There seems to be some confusion." I clicked again. Federal compliance issues. Potential SEC violations. Multi-state regulatory conflicts. Additionally, the modified terms create exposure under the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, with potential penalties reaching $100,000 per day for ongoing violations. The Valcrest legal team was now having a whispered conference off-camera. I could see Marcus Webb's face growing darker with each slide. "I need to stop this meeting," Webb said suddenly. "We need to review these compliance issues immediately." "Marcus, please," Brad said, panic creeping into his voice. "This is clearly some kind of mistake." "The analysis appears thorough and well documented," Webb replied coldly. "Until we can verify the regulatory implications, we cannot proceed." I clicked to my final slide. A simple, professional conclusion. Recommendation: suspend contract execution pending comprehensive legal review. "Consider this my exit memo," I said quietly, then left the meeting. The screen went black, the room went silent, and Brad's $7 million deal died in exactly the way he'd killed my career. Quickly, efficiently, over Zoom. My phone started buzzing before I'd even closed my laptop. The first call was from Marcus Webb himself. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts from colleagues who'd somehow already heard what happened. Then more calls. Brad's assistant, the head of legal, people I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly desperate to reach me. I drove home in silence, ignoring the digital chaos exploding in my wake. By the time I walked through my front door, the story was already spreading through the industry grapevine. Viraon's biggest deal in company history had imploded in spectacular fashion. The Valcrest Capital partnership was officially dead, killed by regulatory concerns that somehow nobody had noticed until the final signing ceremony. My phone rang again. This time it was Sarah from accounting, someone I'd always liked. "Isla," she said the moment I answered. Please tell me you're coming back. This place is absolute chaos. Well, what's happening? Brad's locked himself in his office. The board is demanding answers. Valcrest's legal team sent a formal letter saying they're suspending all negotiations indefinitely. The compliance issues you raised. She paused. They're real, aren't they? Every single one. Jesus, how did Brad miss something that big? I almost laughed. He didn't miss it. He created it. The original contract was clean. He modified it without understanding what he was changing. The silence on the other end told me everything. Sarah was smart enough to connect the dots. The board wants to meet with you, she said finally. They're talking about reversing the termination, bringing you back to fix this. I'm not interested. Isla, please. We need... I hung up. The next call was from Brad himself. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. You destroyed everything, he said without preamble. His voice was raw, desperate. $7 million, Isla. Do you understand what you've done? I understand perfectly. I showed Valcrest Capital the legal risk you introduced when you modified my contract. I probably saved them from millions in regulatory fines. This was my deal. No. The word came out sharper than I'd intended. It was my deal. My 4 months of relationship building, my negotiation strategy, my compliance framework. You just stole it and broke it. I can fix this. I can call Marcus. Explain that there was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. Brad, you fired the person who knew how to structure the deal properly, then tried to close it anyway. What did you think would happen? The line went quiet except for his breathing. They're calling for my resignation, he said finally. Good. The board is considering legal action. They think I committed fraud by signing off on a contract with known compliance issues. Did you? Another long pause. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know the risks were there. That's the problem, I said. You didn't know, but you fired the person who did. I hung up and turned off my phone. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and watched the sunset. Somewhere across town, Virion Technologies was burning. Brad's career was over. The deal that was supposed to make him a hero had become his professional obituary. And I felt nothing but satisfaction. The news broke on Monday morning. Virion Technologies CEO resigns following failed $7 million deal. That was the headline in TechCrunch. The article was clinical, professional, but I could read between the lines. Brad had been forced out by the board after what they called significant due diligence failures that exposed the company to substantial regulatory and reputational risk. Marcus Webb was quoted saying Valcrest had lost confidence in Virion's ability to deliver compliance solutions. The deal was officially dead. Worse, Webb had shared his concerns with other potential clients. 3 more partnerships were now under review. I found myself standing outside the Virion building Tuesday afternoon, watching employees stream out with cardboard boxes. The company was hemorrhaging talent. The stock price had dropped 40%. The board was scrambling to find interim leadership while they searched for a new CEO. My phone had been ringing nonstop for 3 days. Headhunters, former colleagues, even competitors offering positions. The story of what happened had spread through the industry like wildfire. And somehow I'd become the woman who'd single-handedly destroyed a corrupt CEO's career. I wasn't taking any of the calls. Not yet. Standing there on the sidewalk, I thought about Brad's words from that Zoom call. That's what smart women do. He'd been so confident that I'd disappear quietly, that I'd prioritize my reputation over my principles. He'd been wrong about what smart women do. Smart women don't disappear quietly when they're betrayed. They wait, they plan, they strike at exactly the right moment with exactly the right amount of force. Smart women understand that the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's precise, it's professional. It's letting someone destroy themselves with their own arrogance while you simply illuminate the process. I pulled out my phone and looked at the dozens of missed calls, the hundreds of messages. Tomorrow, I'd start returning them. Tomorrow, I'd begin the next chapter of my career. stronger and wiser and completely unafraid. But today, I was content to stand here and watch the ashes of Brad's empire drift away on the wind. I thought about that moment when I'd clicked share screen and watched his face change from confidence to horror. 3 days later, I was still smiling. They fired me on Zoom. I hit share screen. The deal died, and I walked away, smiling. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and professional justice. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening to this story? Are you at work, at home, or maybe commuting? Drop a comment below and let's connect with fellow listeners around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Isla's revenge. Was it justified, or did she go too far? I love hearing your perspectives on these workplace drama stories.